Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at a couple of games which I played earlier today in the Norway Chess Blitz event. Now, as some of you have mentioned in your comments to our YouTube videos, you're wondering, why am I not streaming at home? Why am I not at my usual setup? The reason is quite simple. I'm actually making an attempt to play in a professional chess tournament here in Norway called Norway Chess. Now, before we play the classical portion of the event, we start out with a Blitz event, and from the Blitz event, we determine the seedings. Now, I really like the Blitz tournament before the classical portion because you control your own destiny. If you play well, you will be rewarded in the classical tournament with one extra white, i.e. top 5 seeds get 5 whites and 4 blacks, bottom 5 seeds get 5 blacks and 4 whites. So the goal is to finish in the top 5. All right, let's jump right into the action. So in the first game, I drew quite comfortably with the black pieces against Wesley So. Now, also the time control is 3 minutes plus 2-second increment for every game. So I draw the first game, and in the second round, I'm playing with the white pieces against Norbek Abdusattorov, the very talented Uzbeki junior player. So we start with d4. We get d5, knight to f3, and now Norbek plays knight f6, and here I play bishop g5. Now, this was part of my light preparation for the Blitz event. What I prepared was very classic opening d4, knight f6, and bishop to g5, which of course is a classic Trompowski opening. Jokes aside, it's named after the famous Brazilian master Trompowski. So, after d4, we get d5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop g5. This, of course, transposes, because after bishop g5, d5, you can play knight f3. So I was quite comfortable, and I was in my preparation here and feeling very good. Anytime you play an opening with such a noticeable name, you're expecting good things to happen. So here, Norbek plays knight to e4. I go bishop f4. We get c5, and now I play the move e3. Knight to c6, and now I go knight b to d2, trying to finish my development very quickly on the queen side. Now, I have lost one tempo because I went bishop g5 and bishop f4, but when you play such openings in Blitz, you simply want to get a position. You're not worried about playing the absolute best line. So Norbek plays bishop g4. I go bishop to e2. Norbek trades knights on d2, and now he plays this move e6. Here I decide to castle. Norbek trades the bishop for the knight. He trades on d4, and now he goes bishop to d6. Now, here I choose to play this move c4, trying to open up this diagonal immediately for my light square bishop on f3, and the reason is quite simple. If I play c3, for example, after these bishops come off on f4 and black castles, I don't really have a way to play in the center. I can still go c4 maybe, and it's reasonable, but there are no other great ideas. I can maybe reroute the bishop to d3 to put pressure towards the pawn on h7, but after, say, rook e8, bishop to d3, and a move like a6 followed by b5, b4, or even e5, black has all the trumps in the position, pun intended, of course. And if I try to go over some kind of slow idea like a checkmate on the king side, black can always play g6, and this bishop on d3 is staring at a bunch of pawns, and there really are no major threats, and the black king is super snug on the g8 square. So I decide to play c4, trying to open up the diagonal. Norbek decides to castle here, and now I trade the pawns on d5. Now, one thing that was very interesting about this is that Norbek did not trade the bishops on f4. I was expecting Norbek in this position either with castles takes or even immediately to trade the bishops. Additionally, if Norbek were to have taken this extra pawn on c4, since I didn't point it out, here white has the move d5, and after pawn takes pawn, rook to e1. If black goes knight to e7, white can now go queen e3, pinning the knight. You can't castle without hanging the juicer, and if you go king to f8, after this move queen to a3, followed by rook a d1, there's massive pressure here in the center, and white has a big advantage. Furthermore, in a blitz game where white has easy moves and black has to use time to come up with a concrete plan, it's very difficult to play. So Norbek decides to castle, we trade. Now, I thought he should have played this position with the bishops off the board, and after, say, rook f d1, queen b6 followed by rook d8, and it feels like black should be completely fine here. Maybe white has a small advantage, but I didn't really think it was too serious. Nonetheless, Norbek captures back on d5, and now I go bishop e3, rejecting the bishop trade and keeping the bishop pair with these two bishops on the board. And certainly in the long run with the two bishops, I can keep the game going for a long time, which is definitely what I want. So Norbek plays queen d7, and here I go rook ac1, not bishop takes pawn on d5, because after bishop takes h2, check, king takes h2, queen takes d5, material remains balanced. Black has an advantage due to this weak pawn on d4. Black can put the rook on d8. The bishop on e3 is guarding the pawn, but simply it's an empty diagonal. There are no scopes whatsoever, and black is for choice. So I play rook ac1, rook e8 is played. Now I go queen to d3. Noterbeck plays rook a d8, and now I decide to play g3 for a couple of reasons. First of all, it stops black from ever creating any checkmate threats towards the pawn in h2 because the bishop has no scope on the diagonal. Additionally, I can now fianchetto my own bishop by going bishop to g2. So say we get a6, bishop g2. Now my bishop on g2 is great, and with the pawns around it, it's very, very nice. So after g3, Noterbeck plays bishop f8, guarding the pawn. Additionally, g3 also now allows me to take d5. Say black goes knight b8, bishop takes d5. You'll notice there's no bishop takes h2 check anymore. So he goes bishop f8 to guard the pawn on d5. I play h4, g6. Now I go h5, get knight b4. I play queen to b1 here, and not queen b3 because I thought queen f5 was kind of scary. The queen is targeting both the bishop and the pawn. We, of course, have a classic right triangle, but it just felt a little bit sketchy. So I choose to play queen to b1, Noterbeck goes queen h3, and now I have to play this move rook c3. Ideally, I'd love to kick the knight out of town with a3, but if I play a3, black can now sack the rook with rook takes e3. If I take the rook after queen takes g3, bishop g2, queen takes e3, rook f2, knight d3 is a total disaster with the fork of these rooks. And if I go king to h1, black can just go knight c6, followed by bishop d6 and queen g3, and there are all kinds of dangers on the dark squares around my king. So I choose to play rook c3, guarding the bishop so I don't have to capture with the pawn anymore. Noterbeck plays knight c6, and now I go queen to d1 with a very nasty threat of trapping the queen. If black plays just say a move like a5, I can go bishop g4. Queen guards the bishop, the queen is simply trapped on h3, and it's GG, why not? So here we get queen f5. Now I go king to g2. King guards the bishop. I can also use the open h file for my rook now, and it's feeling pretty peachy. Additionally, I'm up a little bit of time on the clock here. So Noterbeck plays bishop g7. Now I go rook to c5. Noterbeck plays queen f6. We swap on g6, and I decide to take this pawn on d5. We swap, Noterbeck takes, and now I go queen to a4. Now, the position here is still relatively balanced, but one thing that's really important to note when you're playing Blitz, and Rapid to a lesser extent, is that whoever has the easier moves as you're getting low on time, that means more almost than the actual evaluation of the position. And in this case, with this great wooden shield on d5 here, white's moves are easier than black's. So Noterbeck plays rook e7, which is a blunder. Now, of course, we're getting low on time. It's hard to find a move because the rook is under attack. Both these pawns are under attack here as well. And so with both the pawns under attack, the knight loose in the center of the board, it's not easy to come up with moves in limited time and avoid a blunder. So here, Noterbeck decides to play rook e7, which is a blunder because now I take the pawn on a7. Noterbeck plays queen to e5. Now here, maybe he could have tried something like knight f5, but after queen to a8 check, if black goes king h7, now I can use the open h file with rook h1 check, and after he blocks, we can swap, and I go queen to f8 here, hitting the rook and the knight at the same time. Of course, it's a classic right triangle, and after g5, I can simply take the knight, or take the knight rather. He takes my rook, and I take his rook, and I have an extra bishop on the board, and it's an easy victory. So Noterbeck plays queen e5 here. Now I check, he blocks, I take the pawn, queen guards the bishop, I hit the pawn on f7, and here the game should effectively be over. So Noterbeck plays rook e7, I check, he blocks, I go queen c4 now, keeping these ideas alive on the diagonal, and the knight is also loose on d4. Noterbeck plays rook f8, I go bishop to f4, plays queen e7, and now I play rook to d1, trying to kick this knight out of the center of the board. Noterbeck plays knight f5, and now I go bishop to e4. Now, this move is a horrible move to play, especially when you consider the time situation here. I have 17 seconds to 4. With both of these bishops on the board and these two pawns on the queen side, I should just start pushing P with b4 or a4, and just away they go. Say a4, bishop b2, a5, a6, a7, and this should be straightforward. Instead, I use a little bit of time, like 2 to 3 seconds to play bishop e4, which is a mistake, because now Noterbeck instantly snaps the pawn on b2, and after I take on f5, if I play bishop d6, attacking the queen and the rook, black has queen b7 check, and after king h2, rook e8, white is still better, but now you only have one extra pawn on the queen side, so nothing is clear cut. So instead I play rook d5, Noterbeck goes queen to e4, an excellent move by him because with limited time, now it forces a very simplified endgame, which should be relatively easy for black to play. So we trade the queens, I go rook to b5, and now Noterbeck blunders with bishop g7. What Noterbeck should have played here was this move bishop c3. Now granted, after a4 here, it's very hard to play because after rook a8, I still have rook to b8, and I suspect this bishop's endgame is winning, but the bishop is not a perfect square, and you can try to run with the king to the center very, very quickly. Additionally, you can trade and now go bishop a5, stopping bishop c7. So Noterbeck plays bishop g7, now I go a4, and here he plays rook a8. Now this is a fatal mistake because now I can play rook to b8 check, forcing the trade of these rooks, and with the outside pawn rushing up the board in a hurry, it's simply hopeless. Norbert plays bishop c3. Now I can go bishop c7, stopping bishop a5, and I'm just going to start pushing p. We get king f8, I go a5, and here Norbert resigns the game in view of the fact that if he plays bishop d4 here, I can simply go bishop to b6, offering the trade of the bishops. If you trade, your king is one square your king is one move too late, and white gets a queen. And if you play a move like bishop e5, now I can go a6, bishop b8, a7, and here white simply has one extra bishop. Additionally, if black tries to go king to e7, now I can go a6, bishop to d4, stopping a7. But once again, I have bishop b8, king d7, a7, and the king is one square too far away. So I get this win in round 2 against Norbert. That puts me on 1.5 out of 2, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Now in round 3, I would draw a relatively quick game against none other than Alireza Firouzja with a spiffy shirt and nice suit. But in round 4, calamity would strike. In round 4, I would lose with the white pieces to Fabiano Caruana, and thus that put me on 2 points out of 4. In round number 5, I had some great chances to win against Anish Giri, but in critical moments towards the end of the game, I missed a win, and the game would end in a draw, which also, of course, is not very surprising. So with 2.5 points out of 5 on an even score, in round number 6, I was paired against none other than the former world chess champion himself, Magnus Carlsen, who I've not played in at least 6 months, if I recall correctly. So again, I play d4, get d5, knight f3, knight f6, and I play bishop g5. Of course, as I said before, most of my preparation I did before the Blitz event was the classic Trump-Howski order, but after d5, I was intending to play knight f3, so we get the transposition once again. Magnus plays knight e4, bishop f4, and now we get c5, and here I play the move e3. Magnus plays knight c6, and now I go knight b to d2 once again, and Magnus goes bishop f5 instead of bishop to g4. Now, one interesting thing to note about this game is you'll look at the clocks here and you'll see, wait a second, 3 minutes and 5 seconds to 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Now, what happened is Magnus was fashionably late, as he seems to be pretty frequently to various Blitz and Rapid events these days. He showed up late for the round. Now, I did not start his clock when they said to start the clock, but the arbiter came over and started the clock on their own, so I had to make a move, even though I really wanted to wait for Magnus. And when Magnus showed up very quickly, he was very upset. He was muttering under his breath in Norwegian. I don't know what he was saying, but he was definitely not very happy about it. But I do think that needs to be pointed out, just so people are aware that I was waiting for Magnus. There's no drama, nothing really going on, but it should be pointed out. So after bishop f5, I play c3, Magnus goes e6, and now I play this move queen to b3. Now again, I have a 40+ second time advantage, so I need to use it and try to get an advantage quickly, but queen to b3 is definitely not it. Now what I probably should have played here was knight takes e4, and after bishop takes e4, something like knight to e5 maybe, or even bishop d3 or bishop b5, and just played a tempo where I try to play really quick moves and just keep the pressure on the clock. Because when I go queen to b3 here, after Magnus plays queen d7, already I have to figure out what my plan is. Now, initially, I was intending to go knight to e5, but after knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, knight takes d2, king takes d2, and c4. With my king in the center of the board, sure, I have a bit of a triangle or a pyramid formation here, but it doesn't look right. After queen e1, f6, bishop g3, bishop e7, black can play b5, b4, attack on the queen side. I have no real breaks in the center of the board here, and I think black is just much better. In a Blitz game, I don't even have a clear-cut plan, so it's made that much worse. So I decide to go bishop b5, Magnus trades the knights, and here I decide to take with the king. Now, of course, this violates all the basic principles, and probably I should take with the knight. But after a6, bishop e2, c4, queen d1, and b5, again, I felt like Magnus is all the play here. He's got this nice pawn chain. He can start pushing b4 and b takes c3, try to put some pressure on the b file. And again, white doesn't have an obvious plan. And in a Blitz game, if you don't have a plan, the time advantage is going to evaporate. I'm probably going to be in a lot of trouble very quickly. So I decided to take with the king, keeping the idea of knight to e5 alive. Magnus plays f6, and now I go queen to a4, trying to trade off the bishop for the knight and trade off queens here. And then my king on d2 probably isn't as bad in an endgame. So Magnus goes rook c8, and now I take on c5, which is a horrible move here. But already here, time had evened out, and I was looking for straightforward moves. And when I take, I have a clear-cut plan. If black takes the pawn, I can go knight to d4, and I put pressure on the knight and the bishop here. And after e5, which was played in the game, which gives black this big black center, I can go bishop g3, bishop takes c5, and now I have rook hd1, and I'm going to go king e1 next move and try to put pressure on the pawn on d5. Magnus plays a6, I go bishop e2, and now he finds an excellent move considering the circumstances, which is this move knight to e7. Now, this move is not the absolute best move, but what it does is it ensures an endgame, and with this big black center, there's a slight advantage for Magnus, so it's all very, very good right now. So we trade the queens. I go king to e1 here, and he goes bishop e6. He'd love to go knight f5 and win the bishop here because I have no retreating squares on h2 or f2, but that would hang the pawn on d5. So Magnus plays bishop to e6 here. I go h3, we get king to f7, and now I go knight d2. Magnus plays h5, I go rook c1, and now he plays knight f5, trying to trade the knight for the bishop. Here I go bishop to h2, which was the whole point behind playing h3, and Magnus goes knight to d6. Now already here, I think knight d6 is starting to go in the wrong direction. I felt like knight f5 was a little bit weird because the knight going to d6 doesn't really do a whole lot. The c4 and e4 squares are covered. Additionally, it doesn't support the pawn push in the center, because if you do play d4, I can always trade, and this gives me a nice square on e4, either for the knight or for the pawn. Furthermore, the pawn on h5 is weak as well, so you can't just play rook d8 because then you would hang this pawn. So already here, I felt like Magnus was kind of going in the wrong direction a little bit, but nonetheless, it's still probably preferable to play, especially because black has all these very solid pawns in the center, and white has to come up with a way to put pressure on these two pawns on d5 and e5. So here I go bishop f3, Magnus plays g5, trying to play g4, and now I play knight to b3. And here Magnus was very visibly frustrated. Once again, I think he muttered something under his breath in Norwegian, and I was feeling fairly good about myself. That being said, Magnus is a very strong player, so you do take all these reactions with a grain of salt. So Magnus plays the move knight to e4. I trade, and now I go c4 here, trying to open up the diagonal, trying to weaken this big black center here. And already here, I felt like I was doing pretty well. Magnus goes g4 here after a 40-plus second think. I take on d5. He takes on f3. I take on e6 with check. He takes, and now I take this pawn on f3. Now, this is a very difficult decision for me here to take the pawn because I could also trade the rooks and then take the pawn. And here, white has one extra pawn, but I felt that after this move, knight to a4 or even rook to c8, followed by knight to a4, black has a lot of play here, and even though I have an extra pawn, the bishop on h2 is very, very weak because these pawns prevent the scope. And if I ever go f4, black is e4, and you get a nice little bastion on d3 for the knight. So it's a very tough decision here, but I decided to take on f3 because now after we trade the rooks, if black plays a move like knight to d6, I can play rook c7, creating the classic kebab with the rook on the 7th rank. And after knight g5, king e2, black gets back the extra pawn, which I had, but here the knight is stuck on the rim. So here I play this move f4, trying to trap this knight on h3, no jump back to g5, and now Magnus plays this move e4. Now the computer thinks that after king f5, king f3, rook to g8, if I play e4 here, now after king e6, I can no longer keep the pawn fixed on f4, because if I play f5, king d7, now the knight gets to g5, and otherwise, say I just play rook c7, black can always just take the pawn on f4 here, and now it's different than before, because in this position, if we go back here, if black takes, I take with a pawn, bishop guards a pawn, and the knight is still completely restricted because of this critical pawn. So for that reason, king f5 would have been a little bit better, but Magnus instead decides to play e4. I go king to f1 here, we get rook g8, and now I play this move rook c5, hoping that I can play f5 here and open up this diagonal for my dark square bishop. Magnus correctly plays f5, stopping f5, but also stopping me from capturing the pawn on h5. I go rook e5, king f6, I go bishop g3 here. Now the idea is simple, I want to go bishop h4. Magnus plays rook g4, and now I play this move rook e8. Now I'd love to go king g2 here, potentially trapping the knight, but after knight takes f4 check, I can't take with the bishop because I lose the king, and after pawn takes h4, I lose the bishop due to this pin, and black is completely fine. So instead, I play rook e8, Magnus plays h4, and now I go back to h2. Now, this is very double-edged here because the knight on h3 is trapped. You have no jumps to g5 or f4. On the other hand, my bishop on h2 is also stuck. It can't move on this diagonal, and it has to stay on h2 because of the pawn on h4. So this really becomes a game of the bishop versus the knight. Which one is actually a bad piece here? Now, Magnus goes king g6. I play rook h8, king g7, rook to b8. Magnus plays b5, and now I play this move rook b7, king g6, and I play this move rook b6. Now this move is a clear blunder, and when I was using all my time, I think it was somewhere around this position when I used a bit of time. Maybe the clocks don't reflect it, but I think somewhere around here I used a bit of time. And what I simply missed was Magnus's idea, which he spots instantly, which is that black can try to run in with the king. Now, that alone isn't what makes it such a great move. It's the sacrifice that will occur afterwards, which I completely missed. What I should have done here was I actually should have played this move rook to b6, because now if black plays rook to g6, I can simply trade the rooks, and I can go king g2, trapping the knight. There simply are no squares available for the knight here, and I should win the game. Now, one funny thing actually is that computer actually thinks that after takes and king h5, maybe this is not actually clearly winning, which I think sort of speaks to how difficult of an endgame this truly is, that even though I have an extra bishop, because it's trapped behind the pawns, it's not probably a winning endgame, and that's kind of shocking to see as it's reflected in the valuation. Anyway, after rook b6, probably what would have happened is Magnus would have played something like a5, and after rook takes b5, rook g6, I can now go rook takes f5, and when the rook goes to b6, now I have king g2 winning the knight, and there's a very good chance that I win the game. Now, would Magnus have played rook to g6, traded the rooks, and seen knight takes f2? That's anyone's guess, and we'll probably never know unless Magnus is asked about it. But I would have had great chance to win this game if I had played rook b6. Instead, I check again. Now I take, Magnus goes rook g7, rook f6, king g4, and I play king g2. Now, this is what I missed completely when I was calculating all the lines with rook b7 and rook b6, which is this nasty sacrifice, knight takes f2. Because after king takes f2, now there's this move king to h3 here, and suddenly the rook is infiltrating. You have a kebab on the 7th. My bishop is very, very passive, and now it gets very tricky to play. So I go bishop g1, rook g2 check, king f1, Magnus takes, I go bishop to f2, and now he goes king to g4, and here I play rook g6. Now, this move in and of itself doesn't lose the game, but probably what I should have played was this move a3 here, because now I keep the pawn safe here. If black plays h3, I can check. King cannot enter, because then I have rook g3 checkmate. The king is simply stuck on this f3 square, and if you go king h5 after check, king h6, rook g3, h2, rook h3, I win the pawn on h2, and with it, I should win the game. So a3 would have been better. Now, what I was scared of was the fairly obvious looking king f3, because now if I take h4, there's rook to h2, attacking the bishop, but also threatening the checkmate on h1 as well. Now, the computer says that after bishop to e1, king e3, rook takes f5. After king to f3, I can simply play rook to h5. And after e3, rook takes h4, e2, king to g1, rook b1, rook h3, king to g4. After this repetition here, the game ends in a draw. I can also check on g3, but after king takes f4, king f2, rook takes e1. Now the game once again will end in a draw, because after check, there's king e4, rook e3, king to d4, and there's nothing that I can do. Now, again, with very limited time on my clock, I didn't really have time to process this idea, and probably if I had played rook g6, I would have taken on h4 and lost to this rook h2 idea. I think this is the right position if I have it correct. But anyway, this didn't happen. So I decided to check. Magnus goes king f3. I take, and now this is a little bit different here, because now if rook h2 is played, there's rook to g3 checkmate, whereas in the other variation, the rook was on the f6 square. So here, after I take, rook b1, bishop e1, Magnus takes, I go rook b6. Now, probably what I should have done is played rook g3, king takes f4, and this rook h3 move right away, or even rook b3 might be enough to draw, but at the end of the day, we're both low on time, and I didn't find it. So I play rook b6, which is the start of going the wrong direction. Magnus plays king f3, which is an excellent move. What I was expecting was king takes f4, but after a4, now due to the pin, once again, I should draw this without too much difficulty. But he goes king f3, which is very slippery, because now if I play a4, there's e3 here, and if I take on b5, there's e2 check, king g1 takes, and this is actually a forced checkmate with check, queen, check, and then queen g2 mate. So if I go a4, e3, I have to go rook e6 to stop e2, and then black takes a4, and with the wide peepos, it's a very straightforward win. So I play rook h6 here. Magnus decides to play e3 in this position. And now I play the move rook h3, king e4, rook h5, b4, rook h2. And basically here I'm just sitting on the second rank with my rook. Magnus goes rook a1, I go rook b2, king f3 again. Not king takes f4, because after takes, king f3, rook b2, I should be able to draw. So Magnus's only hopes here are to keep the b pawn on the board and win both the f4 and the a2 pawn. So he goes king f3, I go rook h2 back, goes king f4, I go rook h4, king f3, check, king e4, rook h2, plays f4, rook b2. So now if black plays f3, I can take with check again, get king f3, rook h2, rook b1, check, king e4, and now I inexplicably blunder with rook to h4. What I should have played here was rook to h2, preventing rook b2, and the position still should be a draw. If black plays f3, I have rook h4, king d3, and rook takes b4, and I'm just in the nick of time, because f2 is not possible since it hangs the rook. And if you go rook a1, I can just start checking the king all over the board, And let's just say black goes king e6. Even rook to b2, for example, would be good enough to draw this position because we get a classic rook versus bishop. So I inexplicably play rook h4, and now after rook to b2, it's still apparently a draw after rook to h7, but without this rook h2 idea available, I make the fatal blunder by playing bishop to g3. Magnus goes king f3. I play bishop to e1, he takes, and now I cannot take on b4 because after rook a1, bishop e1, again there's e2 check, and rook takes e1. So here I have to play rook h3, king to g4, rook h4, king g5, and now I can't capture the pawn because the king will capture my rook. King also guards the pawn chain on f4 and e3, and it's now completely hopeless. And I play a few more moves, but the rest is very basic. Now after rook b8, b2, I can no longer move the bishop to attack the pawn because there's a check, and then when I move the king, black queens the pawn. And if I try to go king e2, black and queen again due to the discovered check from the rook towards the king. So I can't move my bishop, can't move my king. You also these two pawns, and the rest doesn't even matter. I go check, king g4, rook b4, king f5, rook b8, f3, rook b4, and after f2 takes, bishop takes f2, e takes f2, I resign the game because if I take the pawn, black queens with check, and if I just play rook b3, there's check again, and then black makes the queen, and with king and rook versus king, Magnus wins this 100% of the time. So very, very disappointing to lose this game the way that I did lose, but alas, it is what it is. So I lose to Magnus in round number 6. That means that I'm now on 2.5 points out of 6. I'm on a -1 score. Not a really great score in terms of getting to the top 5. In round number 7, I would draw a very exciting game against D. Gukesh from India. That would put me on 3 points out of 7. And from 2.5 out of 6 before. So I'm on 3 points out of 7. Now we go on to win my last 2 games, winning with the white piece against Abdusattorov from Norway and Hikaru Mamadiyarov to get to a score of 5 points out of 9. Now the score itself was decent. It was a tie for 5th place with Fabiano Caruana and I think also Wesley So, but unfortunately they both had better tie breaks than me, which means that I end up with the number 6 seed in the regular classical portion of Norway chess. That means that I will start the tournament with 2 blacks. Now, I have started with 2 blacks before, most famously in the London Chess Classic. I think in 2012, I think I scored 1.5 points out of 2 to start that tournament. So it's not the end of the world, but it certainly is not what I was hoping for. Now, Magnus also did not have his greatest Blitz performance ever. He finished in 7th place below me. He lost to Tari in round number 8, the soon-to-be number 1 Norwegian chess player. He also drew in round 9 against Alireza Firouzja. So Magnus also finished in the bottom half. He's going to end up with 5 blacks and 4 whites as well. But nonetheless, it was a good warm-up. Hopefully, I can tinker with a few things, play a little bit quicker, sort of just play better, frankly, because I didn't think I played all that great at critical moments in the Blitz games. But nonetheless, it's still a decent result. So I'm going to go rest, eat some dinner, get ready for tomorrow. Obviously, games will be starting at 5 o'clock local time, which is 11 a.m. Eastern. I will be playing against Wesley So in round number 1. I will be doing a recap after the game, potentially games if we do have an Armageddon. But at any rate, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap of the Norway Chess Blitz event. And once again, make sure to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't. And I will be back very, very soon with some more great recaps of the games that I'm playing here in Stavanger, Norway. See you guys. Bye.